Hello, my name is Rick Waltz, and I was just going to talk to you some about saddles, particularly the Minihan saddle that was produced in Owensville, Kentucky, and just tell you my journey that I went through and my research where it's taken me studying this saddle. I acquired my first Minihan saddle probably 40 some years ago. People have talked about it. I've heard it as a child. My father was saying it was the Cadillac of saddles, meaning it was a very comfortable saddle, the best saddle. And so I'd heard that. And then I had collected one saddle. I had one saddle. And a guy knew I had it, and he said, "Are you collecting old saddles?" And I said, "Well, not really. I just have one, and it was an old McClellan." And he said, "Well, I'd like to trade you a saddle for that wood trailer out there." So I was needing to get rid of it anyway. So he said, I said, "Well, yeah, sure." And he said, "It's a Minihan." So we went ahead and traded without me really looking at it, and he brought it up, and it was a complete saddle, stirrups and skirts and everything on it. And so I picked it up, and I grabbed the pommel and the cantle, and it just swiveled in the middle. And my first thought was, man, he's traded me an old broke saddle. This thing ain't worth anything, And so I got, I checked it out, kept it for several years, and it had the stamp on it. And it was one thing, I hadn't really seen many saddles with stamps on it that told who made it. And I really didn't know much about Eugene Minihan, or that his first name was even Eugene. So I was looking at the leather, was real kind of crackled and stuff, and I was trying to make it out. And I kept thinking it was supposed to be genuine Minihan, but I couldn't make that out. And I thought, this says Eugene on it. And I said, I don't know, that's, But then later I would find out, the saddle was Eugene Minihan's, Owensville, Kentucky. And that's what my stamp said. So I kept it around for years because of that. And over that period of time, I'd never seen really any other saddle that had the stamp on it. Some people that dealt with them more may have seen them. But as far as me, I'd seen a lot of them that hadn't. People were giving me saddles similar to it, made by other men that had really copied the Minihan. So I'd be around someplace, and somebody'd say, talking about it, and they'd say, "Well," said, "you want this old saddle, So I ended up with a salmon saddle, and it turns out when I got to really looking at the stitching and everything, the salmon saddle was like the same stitching that was on Minihan, but it had the salmon's name from Mount Sterling, Kentucky. And then later on, I would get a R.F. Hutchison saddle from Elliott County, and then a Perry Foster saddle from Elliott County, and they were all seemed like very similar to the Minihan. These other saddles weren't spring seat saddles, but the Minihan was what it was what I had. So anyway, as time went on, I would hear stories about different kind of folklore stories, and didn't know really what to make of it. And it'd been a long time, over 100 years, and people could be like making up stories. I don't know, but so I had the opportunity to. I'd heard there was something going on in Owensville with a museum. Actually, I was going down just to see another saddle because I hadn't really seen many of them, and found out that they were starting a museum at the courthouse in Owensville. So they had a spring seat Minihan saddle and a Minihan side saddle in the display, and they were just putting it all together. And so anyway, I started researching and volunteering, with to put together the exhibit in the Owensville Museum. And I'd also worked on a McClellan saddle for the Military Museum in Morehead, Kentucky, and so we, you know, started really researching some of this stuff on Minihan, and so I found out, you know, that it was there was something, the way it was done, the way the leather was stuffed in it from the behind, and it was a cotton. Some people thought it was a wool, but I talked to a couple saddle builders that had done several hundred saddles, one being Danny Grimm and one John Goble, Danny Grimm from Olive Hill and John Goble from Louisa, and they said it was, you know, cotton. And so anyway, we were discussing it, and so I had these old saddles, and mine was not great shape, but so I could just reach in and pull some of the material out, and it was cotton in the decorative part of it. Now in the bottom padding, it would be some sort of animal hair, possibly horsehair, could possibly be you know, goat hair, or a friend of mine was cousin of mine was had been raised around a lot of hogs, and he said it was a hog that had long hair, and it looked like hog hair to him. So anyway, it's some type of animal hair that was in the bottom of my my Minihan, and so anyway, I just really enjoyed, you know, working on the saddles, and one of the things that really I dove into Minihan the man himself, and he seemed like not a lot of people really knew what he looked like, and they had done a sculpture of him and some things. So anyway, I got interested in him and where he was from and where he died and whatever. And something that stood out to me in everything I seen, every publication, every book, that Minihan died in 1926. So anyway, I got into ancestry and got to looking at him and his family. His wife's name's Margaret. They were Irish people from Covington. And so they, I found out that in obituary that he died in 1918. Well, a lot of people didn't believe that because they had heard 1926. It's in publications today. You can see it again and again and again. So my dad would call this a wild goose chase, but I said, I'm going to go to Fort Mitchell up around Covington, and I'm going to find Minihan's gravesite and put this to rest. So I called, and there happened to be a number for the Fort Mitchell, that's St. Mary's Cemetery, a man named Mark that had worked there 42 years. I had a phone number, and he said, yeah, come on. I said, well, I've got the plot numbers and everything. And he said, come up, we'll look at it. So I just took a day and went up there and went through the gates, and there was Mark standing out there by a building, and I told him who I was. In 15 minutes, we walk over to the Kenny family, and there's Eugene Minihan's gravestone, clear as a bell, that 1918. So he says, well, come over here, I'll show you something else. So we go into the building, and he opens a big book where people are buried, the date they were buried and everything. And in 1918, there's Eugene Minihan, buried there. So I never heard anybody ever say that, about him, except for Chuck Insko. He's a saddle builder from Carlisle. His dad was Harry Insko, that did the article years ago on Minihan, and he's the only man I ever heard say it was 1918. But I took the picture and everything, and so that is a falsehood. It's just it was eliminated because it was a 1918 when he passed away. 1918 would put him during the Spanish flu epidemic, influenza epidemic epidemic in 1918. Whether he died of anything to do with that or not, but that was a period that he died. So that's an 8-year period that people thought he was still in Owensville, and he was not in Owensville. And so that was really kind of interesting. And so I've collected up several saddles. I've been a historian and interested in history, and a living history enthusiast. Did cavalry for 20 years, and I've had horses for 30 years or so, and I just got interested in it. So I've been, I've talked with a lot of the saddlers. Danny Graham's been a good friend, and John Goebel, and like I said, Chuck Ensko was instrumental, learning a lot about Minihan. I seen the Minihan stamp. First thing I did was ask him about the Minihan stamp, and he handed me a Eugene Minihan stamp, the original. So his dad had been in Lexington on Broadway with a kind of a high-end saddle shop for about 35 years. He passed away several years ago. So anyway, that's kind of the start. Maybe we'll have some more on these different saddles that men that came after Minihan that essentially was building the same saddle. A lot of people, I think, it's misconception on that people that apprenticed under Minihan. Of course, we know the Salmons brothers did, and there's many other men did. But the Hutchison from Moorhead, he built saddles in Moorhead, and then had their uncle R.F. Hutchison was in Elliott County building saddles, and so a lot of people thought these Hutchisons would apprenticed under Minihan, and I don't think that's true. There was a Hutchison worked for Minihan that lived in Owensville, and I found him in the Owensville Cemetery. He's probably the Hutchison that everybody thinks. They just got confused with these others that were saddle builders from Elliott County and Round County. So anyway, maybe we get together and talk some more about saddles. And I'm from Moorhead, Kentucky, and enjoyed talking with you. Thanks.